Okay, so we just finished going over the depth and complexity symbols of big idea and details. So remember that the details we're focusing on the essential details that support the overarching big idea. So we just went over this with the short Pixar film with the birds, but now I want to come back to our topic, an article of ancient Greece that we've been looking at the past day or two. So we've already read this through once. We watched the video of me annotating the first part of it, and then I asked you to annotate the second part of it. So, all in all, we should have gone through it once already. So, this will be our second time going through it. And instead of annotating for the sign, notice and note signposts, we're going to be looking for the big idea in details. Now, since we have read it once before, we can theorize and kind of start drafting a big idea already. So, the one that I came up with that I think is most relevant to this article, but also to what we're going to be studying with ancient Greece in general, is the big idea of ancient Greece was the beginning of Western society, kind of the basis of it. So as we go through, we are going to think about that as we read this article again. So I'm going to type this up here. Big idea, ancient Greece was the beginning of Western society. This way we can have it on the screen and we can refer back to it as needed. Okay, let's see. Try to make this, try to make this bigger so that we could see it easier. Okay, so our big idea is that ancient Greece is the beginning of Western society. So we're going to keep that in mind as we go through and read. And now we're going to be reading specifically 4 details to support this big idea. So I have changed my annotating tool color to aqua so that we can see the difference between our notice and note annotations and our depth and complexity annotations. So let's begin reading. The term ancient or archaic Greece refers to the time 3 centuries before the classical age, between 800 and 500 BC, a relatively sophisticated period in world history. Archaic Greece saw advances in art, poetry, and technology, but most of all, it was the age in which the polis, or the city-state, was invented. All right, so I'm going to pause here and I'm going to mark the idea that the city-state was invented because a lot of the way that they have set up their society here in Greece is the foundation for how we have continued and developed as a society today. So I'm going to consider that a supporting detail to the idea that Greece is the foundation of Western society. The polis became the defining feature of Greek political life for hundreds of years, protected by a god or goddess. During the so-called Greek Dark Ages, before the Archaic period, people lived scattered throughout Greece in small farming villages. As they grew larger, these villages began to evolve. Some built walls. Most built a marketplace, an agora, and a community meeting place. They developed governments and organized their citizens according to some sort of constitution or sets of laws. Okay, I'm going to pause here because we just found a lot of details of things that we see in our world today that Greece started doing during this time period. So I'm going to go ahead and mark those as supporting details. So I'm going to say most built a marketplace. I mean, we have stores now, and a community meeting place. You could consider schools or churches, stuff like that, to be a community meeting place today. So that's one. They also developed governments and organized their citizens. So governments, we definitely have governments today. And then organized their citizens according to some sort of constitution or set of laws. I mean, we have a constitution and we have a bunch of different laws that we have to follow, right? So these are all things that we still see in our world today. They raised armies and collected taxes. Again, these are things that we see today. And every one of these city-states, known as polis, was said to be protected by a particular god or goddess, to whom the citizens of the polis owed a great deal of reverence, respect, and sacrifice. Depending on your religious beliefs, you could also say that this is a foundation as well in our society. Of course, not everyone follows that, but it could be something that you see as descending from ancient Greece as well. Though their citizens had in common with Herodotus called the same stock and the same speech, our shared temples of the gods and religious rituals, our similar customs, every Greek city-state was different. The largest, Sparta, controlled about 300 square miles of territory. The smallest had just a few hundred people. However, by the dawn of the Archaic period in the 7th century BC, the city-states had developed a number of common characteristics. They all had economies that were based on agriculture, not trade. For this reason, land was every city-state's most valuable resource. Also, most had overthrown their hereditary kings or basileus and were ruled by a small number of wealthy aristocrats. Now, I would say that yes, we have economies, but I would say it's heavily dependent on where you live, whether it's based on agriculture or trade. I would say where we're living, it's going to be more trade. We're not as much, most of us are not directly involved with farming, right? So this could be kind of a question mark depending on where you live. We'll finish this last paragraph. These people monopolized political power. For example, they refused to let ordinary people serve on councils or assemblies. They also monopolized the best farmland, and some even claimed to be descended from the gods. Because the poor with their wives and children were enslaved to the rich and had no political rights, Aristotle said, there was a conflict between the nobles and the people for a long time. All right, so I think we got the biggest and the most essential supporting details here in Aqua at the beginning of this article. Now, just like last time, I'm going to turn it over to you in Nearpod, and you guys are going to annotate the last 3 sections for essential details, remember, that connect to this big idea that ancient Greece is the beginning of Western society. Go do that and submit it, and we will be good.